Welcome to the January meeting of the Darien TV79 Advisory Board. We have a quorum and we'll call the meeting to order. And there's no public, so I guess there's no public comment. Approval of the minutes of October 23rd of 2018. Anyone need a copy?
Motion to approve.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Jim, budget update, current year, and also talking about our 2019-20 submission.
So looking at year-to-date up through the end of December, which is 6 months, we had budgeted $24,000 for camera operators. We've only used $9,100. We've only spent about half of our spend on operating supplies, so we are doing fine in terms of money for camera operators. We're coming into the busy period now. The budget cycle has begun, so there are a lot more meetings, so we'll start to burn through that, but we have plenty of money from the grant that we got from the town in our budget, plus we have the money that we received from Area 9, which we have not touched yet, because that rolls over year to year. So our idea is to spend the town money first and then dip into the Area 9 money if we need to. We also have money left over on our capital fund, which Dave can talk about how we intend to spend on that. The budget request we put in for operators for the new budget fiscal year starting July 1st. We have put in the same request as we did last year, which was for $24,000. That's about $2,000 a month. We cut our operating supply request from $1,000 to $500. It's nice to be able to go before the board and say we're doing as much, if not more, with less, which is the theme this year in all the departments. And on the capital side, we only put in one budget request. Last year we asked for, how much did we ask for? 25,000? 24, 25,000? Because we had to replace the cameras and the control equipment for room 206. We did not have to ask for that money because the Darien Foundation stepped up and gave us a grant to do that. So this year we put in a request for $3,000, which we want to use to be able to broadcast live from room 119. That's a big meeting room, actively used. For example, Planning and Zoning is meeting there this evening, but we only have recording facilities down there now. We don't have the capability of going live. So the idea is to be able to put in the wiring from room 119 up to the booth, so that if we have a meeting we want to go live with room 119, we'd be able to do that. And we think we'd be able to get away with that for about $3,000. I've not heard how that has been addressed yet. They haven't got to the capital requests in the budget review by the Board of Selectmen.
But summer would be, if that got approved, that's something we could do July 1st and be ready for the next, over the summer, and be ready for the next.
We can probably do it before then if we get the money.
Yeah.
Well, no, the money
You
doesn't
usually
kick
can't
in
spend it
until
till
July
July
1st, yeah. But we have some reserves we can spend
reserves.
now and put it toward that and defer the other expenses that we're.
It'll make a big difference, because a
It will.
lot of important meetings come out of that room that you
Yeah.
don't want to have the delay.
We have the kind of nice problem, as we saw last week. We did 11 different meetings in 1 week, basically in 3 nights. And we had some nights when we were doing 3 meetings simultaneously in the evening, and then there were daytime meetings as well too. But a lot of important meetings happened in room 119, Planning and Zoning, Pear Tree Beach Building Committee, meetings that I think people would like to see live. And even if we have to tape them and then get them on Vimeo, I try to get them up on Vimeo within 24 hours so the interested parties, if they couldn't attend in person, could be able to see them. But it'll be a nice problem to have to say, there's 3 meetings this evening, which are the ones deserve live coverage and which ones will we, be able to get up on Vimeo ASAP.
Is the wiring just low voltage, just network wiring required, or is it other?
Basically, the simplest wiring would be to run a pair of coax up through the spine and around through the risers in the hallway by the stairs. And that would require the town electrician, but jumping ahead of myself here, one of the things I'm looking into with two different companies.
We can jump into the technology
Yeah.
update, so we can have a change of voice.
Yeah,
I didn't
sure.
program this, next time I'll remember to program this better, so that I have a change in voice, so it can go Jim, Dave, Jim.
Looking with two companies getting a bid on putting fiber in. And the reason for fiber is it can give us more capacity as things have had it, as we started with one program, we're doing many more things. And having an endpoint in 119 and an endpoint in the booth could not only let us transmit live, but we're looking at a remote control switcher so we don't have to put an extra person sitting in the booth to transfer our head end over to 119. So we're looking for extra capacity with one pole, and fiber may be the solution to that. I'll know when I have the bids from these two companies. I've been coordinating with Ed Gentile, and it's just a matter of getting the estimates and then making sure we will have the money to do it.
Okay.
Cool. And the fallback plan is we're running coax.
But one of the messages from the Board of Finance with the meeting with the Board of Education to approve that $355,000 was to ask, why are you doing it? And is this a stopgap temporary, or are you going to come back in 3 years and say, gee, we really could use the additional capacity? Tell us now what you need for the foreseeable future, so you don't have to come back.
Which is why I'm
So that's a
looking
good idea.
at fiber and putting in more strands than we actually use.
And they fixed the problem of the dual channels
channel.
on audio. The meeting I watched today.
Still don't know why it did that, because basically it's always been plugged in that way. Nothing's been
In room
changed.
1711 and 119, a lot of times meetings were recorded on only one channel. So if you were listening to it on the train and it was noisy and you have headphones, you're only getting it out of one earphone, or if it's noisy with people outside, it's hard to hear. When both of them are working, it's fine. Anything else from a technology update?
Well, basically, we have been keeping the booth up to date. We've made the ease of transferring from 213 to the auditorium more easily done by the people there. We're looking into updating the graphics and being able to do that in a more seamless fashion instead of seeing the lower third up and down. And we retired the last of our CRT monitors, which of course use more power and generate more heat, so everything in there is now solid state. And so we are progressing little by little. You don't necessarily see everything on the air, but we are constantly looking at it.
Good.
Maintenance-wise, we've just had one of our hard drives go toes up, and that was not repairable, but we had a spare.
And the new piece of equipment from the Darien from saving on the initial grant that they allowed us to use is installed.
Yeah, they got
it's
us a new computer as well. We
Yeah.
saved enough money on the install of the cameras in 206 that there was money left over, and they said, "Whoa, what else do you want?" And we said,
Yeah.
"We could use a new computer," and they bought us one and we installed it, and it's working great.
Good.
So what we try to do when we budget is obviously look at list prices, and then if we get the money, we negotiate.
Yeah. Anything else on technology?
No, we're just keeping our ears open, trying to see what's needed and grow with as needed.
Programming.
I distributed to everybody in advance by email the quarterly update, which I gave to the Board of Selectmen last month, which was for the period of October, November, and December. And there were some interesting, charts that showed viewing patterns on Vimeo and on Facebook. Again, we don't have any metrics on how many people are watching the Altice Cablevision Optimum Channel 79 itself. But I think these are good indicators. I still think a lot of our viewership is on Vimeo. It's not necessarily watching on Channel 79 itself. If it's an important live meeting, yeah, maybe people are tuning in and watching it. But I think that the Vimeo stats show that the most widely viewed meetings are being time delayed and watched by people at their convenience. The top rated meeting actually was one that we didn't shoot. It was done by the League of Women Voters in Westport, the congressional debate between the two state House of Representatives candidates in October, which they gave us a copy of. But P&Z still ranks up there. Pear Tree Beach Building Committee has attracted a lot of interest, especially from neighbors that seem to be surprised for the first time that there was a project underway, despite our best efforts at making sure that all of this stuff is available. And I gotta say nice things about our first selectwoman, because she has really been a champion of making all of town government as open and transparent as possible. She's the one that encouraged us to be covering more meetings. And when these neighbors, spoke up and said, "But you didn't tell us what's going on," she said, "Go to Vimeo. It's all there. Every single meeting of this committee since its inception is there." Basically, you got to be an informed citizen to know what's going on in town, and it's not for lack of effort on our part. The Facebook stats look impressive, but I'm still a little skeptical about whether people are actually watching full meetings there. They're certainly getting an impression. 2.3 thousand 3-second views, a total of 2.8 thousand minutes. So I think that says to me that the average meeting is being viewed for less than a minute. But if they see it on Facebook, if it's pushed in their direction because they've liked the TV79 page and there's something there they want to follow up on, I think they then go to look at the Vimeo page. Here again, Parks and Rec had the largest number of viewers for some of its meetings. I think those were the meetings in November about the Boy Scout cabin rebuild, which again was very engaging with the full community. So Vimeo still seems to be the way where people are accessing the meetings. The boards of finance and planning and zoning are still giving us their agendas with timestamps on them, so that when you go to Vimeo, you can look at the description of the meeting and say, "I'm only interested in this particular project," and you can literally click on a link and it'll take you to that part of the meeting, so you don't have to wade through the whole thing.
We also learned that Twitter, we learned last quarter that Facebook, to buy ads, to boost an important meeting, that they recognized that it was a political group and had to verify by mail that the person we were not bots.
Right.
And we also learned last week that if you have a typo in Twitter and it's close to a dirty word, they will put, "This is a sensitive,
It's explicit.
and you have to adjust your settings for more explicit material."
I think I wrote the word public and dropped the L. And suddenly Mike was going, "What are you tweeting about that is now described as sensitive?" The program guide, as I mentioned previously, we're using MailChimp, which gives us really good statistics on the open rate. I send the email out on Friday afternoon and get about a 20% response rate. I send it again usually over the weekend and get another 5 to 10%. I think we're up to 820 something opt-in recipients on the program guide. And another nice feature, since we load our videos to Vimeo, and when a new Vimeo load goes up, it automatically tweets under our account. And it says, "I just uploaded the Pear Tree Beach Building Committee," and it puts a link there. So I can look on the Twitter stats and see how many people saw that, whether they clicked through on it. Again, I think it's a nice way. I'm not sure people are watching us through their Twitter feed, but it's another reminder. Oh, when I get home, I should probably fire up the computer and take a look at that particular meeting. Staffing is strong. We've had enough people for most of the shoots. I had to come in and do one early this afternoon. We don't have any new trainees in the pipeline, but a couple of the folks that we've had working with us for over a year are now assuming more of my responsibilities in that they are editing the programs after they have finished shooting them and starting the DVD dub, which expedites the process of Vimeoization and gives them a couple more hours that I just take off of my timesheet as well too.
I would say that the staff has become more and more comfortable in there as I am getting less and less phone calls.
Yes.
That's a good sign.
Yeah. There's still a few learning. I had to call Dave this evening and say, how do I get the room 213 camera up on the switcher? But
Well, we like to rewire it when you're not in
that's
there.
right. So yeah, the staff is doing really well. I'm really pleased, and they're working very hard. And as I say, this is the busy season, so we've got a couple of new folks who are doing a very good job. Occasionally, we still make a mistake. I had a staffer who's been with us for 4 or 5 years who forgot to hit the record button and missed the first minute or two of a meeting. But I put a little mea culpa on the Vimeo, and nobody said boo. You know.
One other thing, I sent the clip around from the Board of Finance meeting that you and the staff should be very proud of what James Phelan said is adding Vimeo on demand of most meetings was a turning point in changing how people could review all these meetings and become more informed. And someone else says we've noticed more civility because people are coming to the meetings more informed. And interesting, the Board of Finance is cutting out one whole level of meetings where they used to replicate what the Board of Selectmen did on Monday and have all the department heads come in to present what they just presented to the Board of Selectmen.
Yeah.
So Board of the Finance is gonna watch the Vimeo, either they attended the meeting or watch it on Vimeo, and then if they have a question, they can ask that town employee to come in. But it saves not only the Board of Finance a lot of time, but a lot of town employees from having to do a redundant presentation. So the trick is, so it's clearly had an enormous impact on elected officials and RTM members because, all the Board of Education meetings, I can't go to all the Board of Education. Well, no, now they're all available on Vimeo and you can watch them when it's convenient. And it's really made a big difference on the engagement that I've seen within the RTM and the committees. The next step is then using Facebook and Twitter, how to increase engagement among the next level of people in Darien who don't hear about Pear Tree Point Beach at the last minute, that somehow they've been engaged with what's going on.
To that point, Mike and I serve on the RTM. Last year's budget meeting, the final budget meeting in May, was a non-event. There was no debate, there was no discussion, there was no dissension, because everybody had followed the budget process all along. A couple of years ago, I remember an RTM budget meeting, which was long and contentious, because people felt that they hadn't been informed about what was happening. They hadn't been engaged, and now there's, I was going to say no excuse, but there's plenty of opportunity for people to look at that. I'll give you another example. There's a big hearing on Tuesday night about the plastic bag ordinance, which is proposed.
Wednesday night.
Sorry, public hearing.
It's Wednesday night.
Wednesday night, thank you. Wednesday
It's next Wednesday, actually I
the
teach that night. I can't, the 6th, I think it's the 6th.
yes, 8 o'clock in the auditorium. Be carried live, but I serve on the Public Works Committee, which is one of the primary committees looking at this. And we had a meeting in this room last week talking about it, and the biggest issue was how do we get the word out that this hearing is happening so that everybody in town knows about it, comes, speaks their mind, is engaged and informed. And our chairman had a long list of all the various town boards and commissions and said, okay, who's going to contact beautification and who's going to contact the monuments and ceremonies? And I said, well, these are easy, okay? But after we hit these 500 people who are already involved in town government, what about the other 19,500 who live in this town, who may not read the newspapers, don't watch Channel 79, they just get up, send their kids to school, they have to catch the train and go into the city every day, and they come home and someday they're going to walk into Stop and Shop and they're going to go, where's my plastic bag? I mean, that's the challenge. It's to engage as many citizens in the decision-making process as possible. One other shoot that we did that I really want to give credit to is the ribbon cutting at the Darien High School building committee did last week. Cecil Wade went up and not only covered the ribbon cutting itself, but did a walking tour with Jill McCammon, who is the chairman of that building committee. And he produced a really gorgeous 4-minute video of her showing the cafeteria, showing the enhancements that were made. And we tried to show that last night at the RTM meeting. We had some technical issues, but that's now on the Vimeo site as well too. We are embedding it into our coverage of last night's meeting. He did a really excellent job. And he's the guy on our staff that I turn to when we need something that needs a lot of post-production. So thank you, Cecil Wade.
It was like Rent Live, where one of the stars broke his ankle in the dress rehearsal
really
show.
Live?
Right, so we had the video work great on the big screen at the RTM meeting last night. It's just the audio didn't work, but Jill was right there to.
Yeah, we recorded it with her
do it.
narration. This is the
So she
sound
could just
panel,
do the
these
live
the
narration.
lightings and everything.
I thought, this is
So
just like
the audio wasn't working because we got the equipment at the last minute. We didn't get a chance to set it and test it. So she just grabbed the mic and narrated it and explained what people were seeing. But I'd encourage you to look at that. I'll send you the link. He did a really nice job.
We have the 2019 operating guidelines that all of you have approved. We're waiting for input from the Board of Selectmen. I don't know, maybe we just put it up on our website on page and put it in draft form. Minutes are put up that are still in draft.
We can do that. I think the Board of Selectmen is going to be distracted by the
You've got a
budget.
lot there. They have more important things on their plate
Yeah.
than
I
reading our
reminded
revised
them,
guidelines after 10
when I
years.
reminded them at the quarterly update that this advisory board is looking forward to their response to the recommendations that we have, but it's like, I guess it ain't broke, so we're not going to have to worry about fixing it quite yet. We'll remind them. I'm sure they'll get to it at some point.
What's the budget price?
Get on the agenda.
Process is done. Anyone have any new business? to talk
I have
about?
one piece of new business that I want to share from Area 9.
Oh yeah, the FCC thing.
The
Yeah.
FCC, the Area 9 Cable Council, on which Dave and I serve. I actually got to chair the meeting in December because the chairman was out of town, and I raised this issue. There's a proposed docket before the FCC that would amend the way the cable operators are allowed to pass through the money that is collected from cable subscribers to the folks that actually produce the public educational and government programming. Every LT subscriber pays $5 a year. I think
It's 5% fee on their video, on the video part of their cable package.
Right.
There's a 5% franchise
Right.
fee.
I don't think it's 5%. I think it's just a flat $5.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not 5% of an Altice bill. We'd be rolling dough right now.
Yeah.
We'd be doing an offsite in Vegas or something. So it's like $5 per subscriber. And that money is given by Altice and by Frontier, as a matter of fact, to the Area 9 Cable Council. And the Area 9 Cable Council divvies it up between the educational stations and the government stations. So that's where Dave and I get the lion's share of our capital money and a maximum of $1,500 a
Yeah,
year to
$1,500.
spend on camera operators.
Depends on the year, but 1,500's been.
Right, and that's what we've been kind of socking away for future reference. Anyhow, this proposed rulemaking by the FCC would allow the cable operators, before they pass that money through to the E and G channels, to deduct from those funds some of their expenses, such as wiring to the head end, increased costs that they have for the studios, for public access, etc. We were alerted to this by the Alliance for Community Media, which is an organization Area 9 is no longer a member of, but we keep in touch with, thanks to Mike, feeds us their information. And I suggested to all the towns at the Area 9 meeting that they file a letter with the FCC in protest of this. The deadline was days away. We were one of the only towns that did that. And actually, I was able to get Jamie to send a letter, in addition to my comments as program director. I forwarded you a copy of that. Jamie asked me to actually write it, and she said, yeah, I'm good with that. She filed that letter, so it was part of the public record at the FCC. And we copied our state senators and congressmen. I spoke to Hymes's office. We didn't hear anything back from Murphy, but Senator Blumenthal was kind enough to also write to the FCC and say he supported our concerns, and he hopes that the commission keeps its little fingers off of money that's supposed to be used to develop community programming. I've heard nothing else about
And I haven't gotten any, the Alliance for Community Media does a good job of sending emails, and I haven't, so it must have been either tabled or it's not active. If it had passed, I would have seen something
we'd hear
about
about
it.
it. But we have an Area 9 meeting tomorrow night, and I'll follow up with them and let you know if there's anything else.
It's a changing environment.
Yeah.
Well, also we're getting more and more cord cutting in the state. TV Technology today says that Connecticut is at 49% from the past years in cable cutters. In other words, getting their sources otherwise.
What's the 49%? 49% of Connecticut residents have cable TV?
That
The
have
video
cable
portion,
TV,
but they could still have broadband.
Yeah.
I mean, it fits with what we have too, right? Is that most people are watching it on Vimeo.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
you know,
that's
as long as we have
correct,
that.
except that we don't get the funding when that number goes down.
That's right.
Well,
So how much funding is dependent that comes from the cable companies, passed through from the cable companies?
It's been as high as $9,000 a year. Last year was lower. We split it between the operating, and we've got $2,500 total for the year, and we got about $6,000 for hardware. The rest came from Darien Foundation and from the town.
What amount are they talking about reducing it to? Has there been any kind of numbers or just?
Well, they could do very creative accounting on what they do at the public side. I mean, they maintain 2 studios for it, which most of the public access is now being done off-site anyway.
Yeah.
They don't use that studio very much, and they could charge for wiring something that also includes one spigot to the public side. And but we're paying for the fund is paying for the whole thing. So
as more people cut the cord,
yeah,
there's less money being collected and passed through to the educational and government sides.
And less overall profit for them, so they're looking for areas to get money from.
And Altice is being sued by the Dolan family that used to own Cablevision, claiming violation of the contract over how they sold it because they've been cutting staff at News 12.
They had a deal that they couldn't cut staff for a period of 3 years.
Yep.
And
I know that News 12's, from what Altice has said at these meetings, News 12's ratings are down considerably because it's all coming out of Secaucus. It doesn't have the personalities that people have known, Becky Saran and Tom Appleby, et cetera, and what do you need a News 12 for when you've got the Patch, the Daily Voice, blah, all kinds of different websites that are feeding information.
just a snowstorm.
Just a good snowstorm, yeah. Hersom Acorn, which was the owners of the Darien News Review and other local newspapers, has gone belly up. Partly, I think, because they tried to replicate News 12. They were creating an online television network called Hersom Acorn Network, and that cost a lot of staffing at the local newspapers for local reporters, etc. They closed, I think, half of their weekly newspapers. The other half they sold to Hearst, and Hearst has announced that the Darien News Review is going away, and its content is being merged into the Darien Times, which is now a Hearst newspaper. And we'll be carrying a really excellent column on transportation.
Yeah, I read it. I read it.
Yeah.
The Darien Athletic Foundation, though, picked up a lot of the slack from, or was responsible for her getting out of the
Right,
video
they weren't
business.
getting the athletic audience. I did, speaking of the Darien Athletic Foundation, I did speak with the Assistant Superintendent of Schools, Susie Da Silva, who took me up on my offer. Dave was not available, but I went in to talk with her about Blue Wave TV. And again, this is nothing that it's not our domain, but we've had a lot of questions about Blue Wave TV.
Which is TV78.
Channel 78. And was, I think, it's just not being operated. The Board of Education they went and they just got $6,000 in technology from Area 9, and I told her that she was then incumbent to actually use that money and put some programming on the air. So we had a nice little chat, and one of the things she said she was trying to do, in addition to rerunning all these Board of Education meetings ad nauseum, was to work with the Darien Athletic Foundation to take some of their programming and put it on Channel 78. And I said, great, why not? So I saw a basketball game on a couple of nights ago, and they had formatted it wrong so that it was a square box instead of letterbox. 16 by 9. So that the box score at the bottom was completely cut off from the screen.
The DAF did that, or
Well, no, the IT folks that are responsible for running Channel 78 out of high
gotcha.
school.
Oh, okay.
They run
Yeah.
it through a computer server rather than a video server,
Right.
which also means when
who-
a software update comes along, it shuts it down. And
So
James
who
Flynn.
filmed that? Did the DAF film that?
It was DAF, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And this is a picture of, I shot this off my home TV and I sent it to them last night. This is a picture of what was on Channel 78. It's a big blue screen, looks like a desktop screen, and a little tiny box that showed what was on Channel 78 at the moment. So, and so she saw that, and James Flynn, the director of IT, saw that. I don't think it's his top priority, but I said, you're the Board of Education, you're responsible for this station. I think it's an embarrassment. This is not the quality that the Board of Education is known for. Let us know how we can help you fix that. So, I don't know, they pushed a button, they rebooted the computer or something. But part of the problem is that she doesn't live in town and she can't watch Channel 78. And the IT guys don't live in town and they can't watch Channel 78. So I got to be the feedback mechanism. I hope that they're working on doing something to be able to use, and I told them about Boxcast, which we use, this little device to be able to stream live on the internet, and then to YouTube as well too. They could get one of those for $250 and have that installed and be streaming live, and they could be watching that from their homes in Shelton or wherever it is they live, and at least know what's working and not working on the air, and then remotely fix something like that instead of waiting 12 hours until somebody gets back in the office.
We're in a transition period.
Speaking of transition, just kind of one of the things is if the cable companies are making way for the internet, right?
Yeah.
Is there any push to create similar laws for internet providers that, look, internet providers are huge and maybe, $5 on internet to pay for this stuff? It's something to think about, I guess, in the long term, but...
Well, the internet doesn't have to use the public airways. It's what they pay Verizon or whoever to, it's a different, the ship maybe sailed 10 years ago.
It seems if the internet is now being used as a utility of media, right? And who knows? 25 years from now, maybe Verizon says we don't actually even provide cable; we just provide internet.
That's
That'll be sooner.
what stuff's moving toward.
I mean,
yeah.
Is there impetus to create a similar law that simply says since you provide the only media access, you gotta chalk up $5 for.
I haven't heard of any,
programming.
and I think if you started talking about taxing internet, people would go nuts, even though it might be for useful purposes such as this, or, emergency responder communications and things like that, but it's been turned into such a public utility now.
Well, I think it's, and I, believe me, me talking about new taxes has a certain irony to it, but like the idea is, we had all these laws to protect the sanctity of local programming, that have existed for a long time.
Right.
If the media is changing, but we still want to protect the, local TV, maybe the argument is, these big consolidating companies should pay something, or, I don't know. It's rather than looking at preserving what's dying,
Yeah.
but
Well, at the RTN meeting last night, we had the head of development for Stanford, and they are now putting in gigabit access Wi-Fi all in the entire downtown area. Gigabit, which is they're trying to make, and they are doing a good job of making Stanford more contemporary, getting more technology based, and being able to be a downtown area that anywhere you walk, you have gigabit access.
Well, you need some companies to come back there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was very,
It was a really
when the
impressive
meeting's
presentation.
posted, it's at the last segment, but it's very interesting of what's happening both in Norwalk, in Stanford, and Stanford's. The more people now come to Stanford on the train than go out of Stanford on the train. So there's a net inflow of people coming for businesses.
can we get that on the beautification? The next time they put up the holiday lights, they put up Wi-Fi too.
We were concerned when Altice acquired Optimum Cablevision that they would not follow the model that Cablevision had been embracing for years, which was supporting town-specific educational and government channels. So we asked the town to up its spend on our behalf in anticipation of Altice pulling the plug at some point. Altice has not done that so far. If the FCC allowed them to recoup some of that money, that might hurt us. But I think we could continue along just fine, even if we didn't get money from Area 9. That's not true of many of the other town TV stations. But I think we have, first of all, we bought most of the equipment that we need for a few years. We actually gave some money back to Area 9 last year. I don't think a town has ever done that. We got an equipment grant and we didn't spend it all. And Dave said, well, don't you need something else? I said, no, I got a closet full of stuff. So I think that if Altice did pull the plug, we have proven the value of what it is we provide to the town, that if we had any deficit, the town would help make it up. That's my guess and hope.
I think for the getting money from the foundations, I think from a capital perspective, that's very true. I think it becomes a problem if you come at an operating deficit, because a lot of organizations want to fund capital, they don't want to fund operating.
Yeah,
So.
they've told us that, but
Yeah.
we haven't. We don't have a problem on the operations side. We've spent less than half year to date of what we had allocated by the town. We haven't even touched the money from Area 9 yet.
So
That was one of the questions I had, Ray. What is our year-to-date, like, when do we start and end? Because
July 1st.
Oh, July, okay, so
Yeah.
it's, okay.
July to June 31st. Yeah.
So I mean, the unanswerable question at this meeting is, at what point does our lack of dependence on the funding cause us to say, well, we don't really need to support cable anymore? And there's no reason to do that if it's not costing us anything or it's not hindering the other channels.
Right.
But like for me, and I'm new here, so forgive me. But what I wonder is, does supporting cable limit the quality of the streaming that we put out?
No.
Because they're streaming SD.
Okay.
What we are streaming just what we give to cable. It's basically split
Okay.
Yeah.
that way. Where you get better coverage is off Vimeo, because everything that we do is put on Vimeo.
Right.
Okay, so there are meetings we can't
In
because
HD.
In HD.
In HD.
we don't have a server. Okay, we use DVD playback system that's fairly old,
Yep.
but it works. we've looked at servers. They're still fairly pricey to do what we want, which requires multiple inputs, puts us into a different class of servers, starting at $18,000. And we've got enough equipment and backup spares to keep this going until the world of DVD totally dies on us.
Next Tuesday.
And sorry, the server would be, if it were affordable, the server would be for what?
It would be for TV79 and it would be for the streaming.
Okay.
To program and streaming, and also to program.
But it would also then let us include every meeting that we do. In other words, we're limited to the number of DVDs we can play back in a rack,
6 players.
which
right
is
now.
6.
I see what you're
And
saying.
the
If you had a server, we could
server,
stream everything.
You can put 22 programs a day in there. Or
So-
more.
But because we're uploading to Vimeo, that
Yeah, but
Vimeo-
all the programs have it done to Vimeo and you can pick and choose what you
Right.
want and
Right.
pick and choose where you want to see it in the meeting.
yeah, my concern was coming at the quality of the stuff that we're live streaming, plus the quality of the stuff that we're putting on Vimeo, is not being hindered because we're also outputting content to cable.
No,
No.
not yet.
Okay.
And it's
Absolutely not.
$9,000 a year plus for the funding.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't cost us anything more to put stuff on cable.
Right.
I mean, we're producing it. The audience seems to be adopting its viewing on Vimeo. But I would also argue that there is a fair number of people in this town of a certain age who watch the television but may not have a computer, don't know how to get something on Vimeo.
Yep.
They turn on the set or they come across as they're surfing and they'll go, I'm tired of watching the Home Shopping Network. Let's go up a couple channels. Oh, let's see what's going on with the Pear Tree Beach or something.
I think the iPad itself has closed that gap a little bit, but I agree.
I was surprised at well, the phones have gotten so big, but in our viewership data, how because I watch a lot of it on my iPad, but how little of our viewing is actually on iPads. It's what 40% on desktops, 40% or 50%, 45% on desktops, 45% on phones.
Yeah,
and-
one of the charts viewership by device type. I mean, this I don't know what the metrics are, but this is desktop. This is
mobile.
mobile. This is desktop, and that's tablet.
Wow, I'm shocked at that.
Yeah. So I think a lot of people may have an iPad, but they may not have one that's internet equipped. So they're basically sitting at home, maybe watching it,
Well, it is
on
with
their
if you
iPad.
have Wi-Fi, you don't need.
If you have Wi-Fi.
You don't need.
So don't cut the cord completely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's not, what Dave cites as figures, it's not just unique to Altice. I think Comcast announced last week they'd lost something like 25% of their viewers as well, too. And as the pass-through cost from programming providers like ABC goes to the cable providers, and your cable bill keeps going up, and Altice is raising their rates again.
Yep.
At some point you're gonna go, do I really wanna be spending $150 to watch stuff I don't watch?
But the way,
Yeah,
but
cut
the
the
way,
cord.
but the way the program fees are, they're almost video. They don't make much money off video, but we can't survive without internet and.
Yes, right.
Their
Right.
big nightmare is going to be when 5G really gets penetrated.
Right.
But you've got to put these mini cell towers like on every light pole, and you have 4 different telecom companies all competing for the same light pole because they didn't accept the idea that they all build out the network together and then compete on how they market. Instead, they're all trying to build their own 5G networks, which is enormously expensive. It'll be 5 years before they're in, at least in Darien.
Mike has cut the cord. I mean, you've been watching us quite happily off of either Boxcast or
YouTube Live. YouTube Live is $40. Is $40 a month.
Yeah.
But Cablevision serves or Altice serves a very valuable function for a large percentage of the population that, at this point, don't want to try to figure out
Right.
how to do it. Anything else? Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor?
Second.
We're
Thank you.
adjourned. Thank you.